How to create happiness in marriage. Isn't that the golden question that we're all asking ourselves? I look forward to talking with you today about a key principle to help you create happiness in your marriage. So stay tuned. Okay, so this topic of how to create happiness in marriage. And I want to talk about this specific to this idea of create it versus wait for it, right? How do I create happiness versus wait for happiness to occur in my marriage? And I've run into this over and over and over again in my therapeutic appointments. And I look forward to talking with you today about some steps that you can take to create it. And let me begin with two examples of waiting for it, right? What do I mean by wait for it as opposed to create it? Well, here's two examples. The first one is I'm working with this woman, and this is a very common dynamic, who's really struggling with depression. And in the struggle with depression, it's been around for many years, 10 plus years as we get into kind of the history of the depression. It affects every aspect of her life. It affects her work. It affects her relationship with her husband. It affects her relationship with her children. It affects her spiritual connection, right? Like all aspects of her life seem to be drowned out by this depressive experience. And it's even kind of affected her hobbies and her interests and her relationship with friends, right? It's created isolation, right? It's even affected her health. She's put on some weight as a result of it, of overeating and sleeping more than she should, not being as active as often as she should, really kind of gobbling up her whole life. And not uncommon. In fact, as we go through kind of those symptoms she's experiencing, you'll recognize them as very common symptoms of depression, right? And as we're working together, and as she comes in and starts the therapeutic process, she's expressing this pain and this overwhelm, this helplessness, this hopelessness that she feels. These symptoms have been around for such a long time. They've wreaked such havoc in her life, and she's losing hope that she can ever be in a place that she's not depressed anymore. She goes to sleep each night hoping that tomorrow might be the day that I wake up and I finally feel better. She's been waiting to feel better, waiting for happiness for a long time. And it just breaks my heart, right? As I hear this story and as we get into the dynamics of her life, it's really overwhelming, really, really tragic, right? So that's first example, waiting for the day that she feels better. The second example is a gentleman that I'm working with. And the gentleman that I'm working with feels like he's caught in a loveless relationship. He and his wife are coming for marriage counseling. And as they come and they talk with me about their marriage and their relationship and their life, he continues to feel over and over again that he's in a loveless relationship. He wonders if it was always that way. He remembers when they were dating and courting and engaged, waiting to get married. He remembers there being some spark and some flame in the interaction of the relationship, but very soon into their marriage, soon after they became married, he feels like that loving feeling has gone out in the relationship. And now for 4 to 5 years, he has felt this loveless, like he's caught in this loveless trap, in this loveless relationship, wondering if his wife will ever really care about him, and feels overwhelmed, hopeless, helpless, that she'll ever get there, that he'll ever feel the desire that he desires to fulfill, the passion that he desires to feel, the connection that he desires to feel with his wife. He's starting to feel quite hopeless that will ever occur, right? Another example of him waiting for happiness, hoping each day that maybe today will be the day that my wife finally cares enough to show me love, right? So both situations feeling pretty tragic, right? This woman with her depression, this man feeling like he's caught in a loveless relationship, and both of them seeing themselves as a little bit of a victim to life and life's circumstances. If they had control to change it, they would, but they don't really see their control to manage or influence any of the situation that they're in. They're both waiting for happiness, hoping that happiness will come to them one day, right? And I'm concerned in situations like that when we become disconnected from willing our life to a better place, right? When we feel like we have no influence in our own world to create happiness, right, or fulfillment. When we get into that hopeless, helpless place, we really are quite stuck. And people can stay stuck in those places for years, right? This woman could stay stuck in this depressed state for 10 more years, 20 more years, 30 more years. And this man could stay in this relational difficulty for the same, right? Until maybe one or both of them decide divorce is their best option. And I want everybody out there in the world to understand the power that they have to create change in their lives, happiness in their lives. And here's the key, right? We want to create it versus wait for it. Now, that may sound simple, create it versus wait for it, but think about in your life something that you're struggling with, something that you're having a hard time with. Do you feel power to influence change in that thing? Do you feel that you have any power or ability, right, to influence a different outcome with that thing? Right? It's more common than you might think that we get stuck in this trap of waiting for it, feeling like the circumstances to help feed our happiness are beyond our control. Right? Therefore, the universe or my marriage, my child, my boss, right? Somebody else outside of me has to do something in order for me to feel happiness, right? That I can't find happiness until somebody else is the change, which means that I don't believe that I am the change. And if I'm not the change, I can't create change, right? I am a victim of my circumstances until others around me fix it for me, right? And that's no way to live. In fact, I watch people stay in that spot for years and years and years. So here's the key to creating change versus waiting for change, right? And the key you've heard me talk about several times, but let me go over it again today. The link between our perception and our emotion, and then the link between our emotion and our behavior, right? So when we talk about something like depression, I gave you this example of this woman who 10 plus years has been in this depressed place, right? She's hoping each day, right, that when she goes to bed at night, that she'll wake up the next morning and she'll feel better, right? And then inevitably when she wakes up the next morning, her emotions are about the same place that they left off the night before. This emotional experience of depression is very real. I don't want to do anything to discount the idea that her depression is real. It's absolutely real. She feels it every day, right? But when we know that emotions are tied to perceptions, we start to understand the key to creating happiness a little bit more in our world, right? If she maintains, in other words, the same perceptions that are feeding the depressed emotions, knowing that emotions are fed by perception, right? So if she maintains the same perceptions that are feeding her emotions, it's likely that she's going to wake up day after day after day in those same emotions. And then if her behaviors are attached to her emotions, it also makes sense that those feelings of depression are going to drive her to do actions that maintain depression every day. For example, oversleeping, maybe overeating, right? Being socially disconnected, not reaching out to friends or family, disconnecting from hobbies and interests, right? Maintaining withdrawal in her marriage, not putting herself out there for opportunities for growth at work, or finding new opportunities to connect with joy in general, right? She's not likely to do these things because she feels depressed. And so those emotions are driving behaviors that maintain depression, which just makes it likely that she's going to feel more depression the next day and act in depressed ways and feel more emotions of depression and act out depression over and over and over again, never really looking at the perceptions that are tied to those emotions of depression, right? What's the internal dialogue? What's the narrative in her mind that feeds these emotions that she's feeling each day? If she never uncovers those, it's unlikely she's ever going to feel relief from the emotions that those perceptions are producing, right? And in that place, she'll stay stuck. So the same for this gentleman that I was sharing with you about who feels disconnected from love in his marriage with his wife. It's very likely that he's going to wake up each day feeling disconnected again from his spouse and acting in disconnected ways, right? Because he feels emotionally disconnected from her love, doesn't feel like she desires him, doesn't feel like she's interested in him, doesn't feel like that she's happy to be with him. He's going to act according to those emotions that are tied to those perceptions, right? So those emotions are going to feel similar to the woman that I just described. He's going to feel down, depressed, frustrated, stressed, irritated, overwhelmed, right? Probably cold, disconnected, hurt, right? Confused, misunderstood. He's going to feel all these negative emotions, and they're going to drive behaviors. And the behaviors that they drive for him aren't going to be connective behaviors, right? They're going to be behaviors like withdraw from his spouse, right? Stepping away from her. They're going to be behaviors like cold or disinterested or frustrated or irritated, right? You can just imagine what these emotions look like in his actions in the marriage. And those actions, those behaviors in the marriage continue to provoke disconnect in his relationship with his wife. In other words, he's not getting easier to love. He's getting harder to love. And you'll remember how I outlined this in the feedback loops video, right? Check that YouTube video out if you haven't already. I go into a lot more detail about how these loops occur in marriage. But the point for this video is that he's in a hopeless, helpless place, saying the only way I'm going to feel connected to love with my spouse is if she fixes the problem, right? I have to wait for it. I have to wait for fulfillment from my spouse. And day after day, she disappoints me, right? And in that place, he will likely continue to be disappointed. He may be disappointed for the rest of their relationship. And at some point, their relationship may end because he's taken no action to be part of the solution, right? To create happiness in his marriage. But if he can apply this principle that we're talking about, this link between perception and emotion and behavior, then we can say what he's feeling in the relationship is that he has no love from his spouse. And because he's feeling that he has no love, he's likely operating in a lens, a perception lens. He's likely operating through a lens that says, my wife doesn't care. My wife doesn't love me. And when we're looking for that all day long, we're likely to find it, even when that perception is not true. Even when it's not real, that reality can feel real to him, right? Emotionally, he's going to walk around in that reality, even if that's not her truth, right? She may actually love him quite deeply and be trying to show him. In fact, I can tell you, because I'm doing marriage counseling with them, that she does. She loves him deeply. What she hasn't figured out is how to speak his language of love. She's still learning that, right? And so because of it, she doesn't deliver love in ways that he perceives with perception, in ways that he perceives as loving. As a result of that, even when she makes attempts, he feels hopeless, helpless, frustrated, that he'll always be in a loveless relationship. And those emotions drive him to be anti-connective, withdrawn, irritated, right? Impatient in the relationship, cold, disinterested, all these behaviors that he exhibits because he's convinced that she doesn't love him. And no matter what she says, his perception says she doesn't love him, which drives emotions that feel unloved, which drives behaviors that make it hard for her to love him. And round and round and round we go, right? So you get my point. You get my point. My point is we want to create the happiness, the fulfillment, the joy that we want to experience in life versus just waiting for it. If we wait to wake up one day to feel more optimistic about our life, that day may never come. Because I haven't done anything with the lens, the perception, that is driving that feeling of depression or that feeling of disconnect, which means each day I will likely operate through the same view of the world and of my relationship and of myself. And if I stay stuck in that same perception, that same lens, that same view day after day, I'm likely to feel the same ways and I'm likely to act in the same ways. And as I feel and act in the same ways, I'm likely to perpetuate the very thing that's creating the suffering in the first place. So don't wait for happiness. Let's go create happiness. Now, if you'd like to learn more about this concept, take a look at our Remember video course. Right, this video course goes into great detail about the role of perception in the emotions that I have and in the ways that I act, and invites you to reconnect to the most inherent, most true, most real ways in which to see yourself, your relationships, and life, right? To help clear up that lens that you can feel and embrace more positivity in your life and in your relationships. So that's a great one to check out. I mentioned the Feedback Loops YouTube video earlier. You should check that one out as well as our gridlock video on YouTube. That one also goes into some detail about how we can get stuck in our relationships, kind of acting and perceiving in the same ways, both of us waiting on the other person to actually be the change, right? So check out those. I think you'll really enjoy them. In the comments below, tell us about a time that you caught yourself waiting for happiness, right? Waiting for that change in your life that would help enrich and create fulfillment that never seemed to be coming. And if you figured out a way to create happiness, create fulfillment, create change in your world, brag about that a little bit. Share that as well. Inspire us, right? And some of these things that you're discovering to create happiness and joy and fulfillment in your life and in your relationship. As always, we're so grateful to be with you. Thank you for all the support that you provide this channel in helping us send the message of hope, healing, and fulfillment to couples everywhere. If you haven't already, please subscribe to our channel, like this video, share this video with individuals that you feel like it could benefit, and help us with our mission to strengthen couples all around the world. It's so good being with you. Thank you again for being with us today, and we hope you have an excellent day. Take care.